Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon. If you enjoy the videos here, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the Word Balloon YouTube channel, and of course, if you enjoy the audios and the videos, you can subscribe to my Patreon page, patreon.com/wordballoon. Welcome back. It's time to talk about Harley Quinn Season 1, Episode 3, So You Need a Crew, and I'm very happy to welcome back the co-showrunner and co-executive producer of Harley Quinn, Patrick Schumacker. Welcome back, Patrick.
Hello, John.
And man, another great episode and uses of classic Batman villains in ways that I never expected. We'll get to the big joke coming shortly, but right at the beginning, tremendous interlude with KG Beast. And a wonderful kind. I assume that's KG Beast. He's not actually identified by name, but we're on a Soviet train. There's a warhead heist that Harley is in the midst of, and he is the adversary.
Yeah. This was like we got ambitious. We were like, let's do like a Mission Impossible style. You know, the Tom Cruise feature film franchise Mission Impossible style opening, KG Beast shows up. KG Beast will continue to show up as the series progresses a little bit, mostly for sight gags with his interchangeable arms. But yeah, we just wanted something that felt like in that Mission Impossible or like Bond kind of way, that like something where like Harley's like she's traveled to somewhere in like the Eastern Bloc, to grab this missile, and so we wanted it to be kind of exotic or like jet setting in that way, only for her to be foiled by the Joker because he has a bunch of henchmen, and so we came up with this ridiculous contraption for like getting into the room on the train that houses the missile, where you need like a key here, and then as soon as Harley like realizes that she's got the two keys turned, there's a third key up above where it's like this was like our like sometimes the show dips into like Zucker Brothers airplane territory. This is one of those examples where it's like, oh, and then there's also a third key above the door that you need to turn. So clearly you need more than one person to do this, and also someone either very tall or who carries a footstool with them. And so Harley gets thrown out of the train, like hundreds of feet up in the air off of this bridge, and then by Joker and his henchmen, and then she shows up the next morning, presumably back in Gotham at Ivy's apartment, and says, "I need a fucking crew," looking like hell run over. And so that sets up this idea that we always had built into the first season, into the serialized kind of overarching story, that like if Harley wants to ascend through the sort of criminal ranks in the criminal underbelly of Gotham City, that she's gonna need a small army, and so we were like, well, now this is the episode where, for me, this is like the episode that sort of marks the kind of the beginning of the show in full, right? Because we now, like, by the end of this, I mean, this and the next episode, I suppose, like, the crew is assembled. Our series regulars, this episodes 3 and 4 are the ones that we use to assemble the full cast of series regulars. But yeah, I think also tonally, for me at least, this is like where the show started like firing on all cylinders, and also just like really got to lean in heavily to the idea of the glass ceiling existing for female supervillains, that even in the world of supervillainy, there is a glass ceiling. Misogyny is rampant. Gender equality is non-existent. And I think and we ended up making it part of I think the dialogue in this show, but one of the writers on staff came up with this, and I'm blanking on who to attribute it to, but it was not me. But the idea of newspaper headlines in Gotham City, when a man robs a bank, he's a criminal mastermind. When a woman robs a bank, she's a crazy bitch, as far as the newspaper headline would read, the front page says criminal mastermind robs bank or crazy bitch robs bank, depending on your gender lines. And it became part of the dialogue in the show with, I think, Queen of Fables and Harley. But yeah, that idea was just so important to the series as a whole, or at least like the first season and parts of the second season. And this show was sort of, when we figured out how we're going to articulate that idea. I read some quote the other day that was so good. It was a Roger Ebert quote where he was like, great movies aren't great because of what they're about. It's because of how they're about them, or how they're about those ideas. And I think I love this episode so much because I think it was a testament to the writing staff and how great they were that we landed on this idea and this articulation and like a way of bringing Doctor Psycho into the fold. So, this episode is the introduction of Doctor Psycho, voiced by Tony Hale from Arrested Development and Veep. We have a ton of Veep actors on our cast. I think we just like went down the call sheet on a Veep call sheet and just like, yeah, what about this person? Okay. So anyways, Doctor Psycho is traditionally this Wonder Woman villain from the 30s, I think. I mean, it goes back 30s or 40s.
Probably the 40s, yeah.
40s, yeah. And he's an original Wonder Woman villain and was this sort of consummate misogynist, who was a, sort of dyed in the wool misogynist, like openly misogynist, like even like back then.
Sure.
And we're like, all right, well, like the world has changed, but like not that much. So let's make this guy part of Harley's crew. Like, how can we come up? Because this guy would like never in his right mind ever work for a woman, and especially not Harley. And so, okay, that's a delicious kind of math equation to figure out, to solve. Like, let's figure it out, and that led to his fall from grace. Well, what would a fall from grace for a guy like that look like? And, I think at the time it was still of writing this episode, there were several, male celebrities, that had fallen from grace because of, whether it is like misogyny or outright, lascivious activities that, put them in the spotlight in a negative way, and revealed them for some of their worst qualities, and it ended up cancel culture and all of that.
Cancel culture, absolutely, man. That's the words I was going to use if you didn't use it.
So it felt like, well, wouldn't it be fun to have Dr. Psycho get canceled? And how would that go about? And that's when we arrived on what you see in the episode, which is that in the heat of battle with Wonder Woman, Dr. Psycho uses the C word.
Yeah.
And it's the only show that, in a show that is completely uncensored. It is the only word that we ever bleep out in our show ever. And, that was for comedic effect. It was for dramatic effect. We always knew we were going to bleep it out. We were never going to not bleep it out. We just wanted the word. It's like how Kimmel does, Jimmy Kimmel will do that recurring bit on his show where they just bleep out words that aren't dirty words, but it just sounds so vile.
Yes.
And so just attuned to the bleep being like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did that. Plus, it was like in the context of the show, he was on, it was a news broadcast, so they would have bleeped it out anyways.
But the world literally stops when he does, and that's what's great. And I'm glad that got through, because as we were talking about in the previous episode about finger banging, the finger banging debate, I can only imagine the C word debate. And really, like, how did it land in the writers' room? I mean, again, you've got men and women in that writers' room, and how, what was the feeling?
Oh, there was no debate. It was like unanimously male and female, like everybody thought it was hilarious.
Because again, it's supposed to be reprehensible, and yes, this terrible transgression that causes Dr. Psycho. It's so funny that we're talking in these high-minded ways that Dr. Psycho should be canceled because he used this terrible word. And also, I love the Legion of Doom's reaction as well, that they even have a public statement of, we look, we're villains, but we won't tolerate that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is not our brand of evil. Lex Luthor distancing himself, like trying to get ahead of it.
With all the villains behind him. It's like, listen, we're not here to talk about crime today. We're here to talk about proper behavior. And I'm sorry, that's unacceptable. And it's like, that's exactly. Welcome to today. And God bless you. That should be the way that attitude should be. And again, to put Dr. Psycho in that kind of position that he's got to he has no choice. I mean, because otherwise he's on his own. I mean, he thought he was part of the Legion of Doom until this happened. And again, ripped from today's headlines of celebrities that find themselves in this position. Very interesting.
Yeah. And Tony just being able to illustrate that, like Dr. Psycho's inability to contain himself. That he gets so mad, and he just, as time goes on in the series, he gets a little bit more zen. He starts meditating. But man, he's got some bad anger issues.
Yeah.
And and we never really truly explain like why he hates women so much. We have a flashback in like a later episode, in season 2, where he kind of talks about like where like when his powers start manifesting, and then he comes out of it and he's like, and that's when I started hating women, and everybody's like, what? That has nothing to do with any of what you just said. But we definitely got the note from the studio because they were like, well, that has nothing to do with anything. And we were like, yeah, I know, because he probably doesn't know why. He doesn't know why.
Right. He's not evolved enough to understand his own negative behavior. I can appreciate that. Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's great. So again, Harley needs a crew. And as you know, she said, nobody's going to give it away for free. And we cut to Maxie Zeus. Maxie Zeus is Tony Robbins doing a full house motivational speech to potential villains. What's keeping you from succeeding? Let's go through this. And that was outstanding. And again, making Maxie Zeus of all people a motivational speaker. Okay, I'm on board. That's again an area that you never associate with Maxie Zeus, but why not? It's fantastic.
Yeah, well, I mean, we figured. I mean, that's also like I would categorize Maxie as maybe not A-lister, right? So like, we figured like, okay, here's a villain who relies on like the gig economy, and he's a villain, but also he's got to supplement his income. So like, okay, like he's doing the TED Talk circuit kind of thing, and yet he's so self-aggrandizing, talking about the pile of gold that he sleeps on and all that stuff. But like clearly, like it's yes, like his house is opulent, but like he's also like insecure about these things. But he like presents himself like this sort of macho pro wrestler, and then that's when we were like, okay, well, Will Sasso should be the voice of Maxie, an actor who we've worked with for a while and we love. And Will is, another alum of Mad TV, good friends with Nicole Sullivan, who we mentioned is voicing Mrs. Cobblepot in episode 2. So we've known Will for a long time, and he knew exactly what we were looking for and nailed it. And Maxie Zeus is another character who we finally got the opportunity to bring back for one episode in season 2. So I mean, the show is such an embarrassment of riches with characters just because of just the legacy of DC, and that and the fan response has been really great with like these interpretations that it's like we want to bring like everybody back, but at a certain point it's like we have a budget. we have stories to tell that just cannot support cameos by everybody, but Maxie does eventually come back. But we have this episode is also our first ever pixelated penis. And boy, there's a lot of them in the episode.
Yes, there are.
You should have seen. So Maxie Zeus's. We pixelate Maxie Zeus's penis in a backstage moment when he is coming on to Harley, and uncrosses his legs and reveals he's not wearing underwear. But he's, obviously he's an insecure guy. He's his house is a monument to phalluses, and every pillar in his house is either Maxie Zeus's legs and butt. Or
his nipples, of course.
His nipples, his penis is everywhere. So we had a bunch of the architecture of Maxie Zeus's was pixelated out, and then also, but we have all of our background designers and those crew members who had to create these things either in a computer or as hand drawn sketches, which are all uncensored. And so it was weird when we were pitching out these ideas to executives in the room, and behind me it's just this this row of Greek columns, but they all just look like dicks. And it was definitely one of the weirdest moments of my career.
I'm sure.
But man, it made it into the show because it seemed right. It seemed right, and everybody was game.
Well, and then the contrast of that story, and as you say, the glass ceiling story that's being explored, and then the Queen of Fables. And I mean, and to her challenging the Justice League, to her final fate as now trapped inside the tax code and sitting in a 1-800 kind of tax office to help you, cheat your taxes or get a better deal for your taxes. And that the book is Chain Smoking, which I think is fantastic.
Had to do that.
And Queen of Fables, is that who plays the Queen of Fables?
That's Wanda Sykes.
I thought it was Wanda Sykes, and if not, I was going to assume it was a great voice actor trying to be Wanda Sykes. Man, perfect casting. Good Lord. A powerful woman suffering a ridiculous fate right now, but you can't contain that attitude. And again, that is the beauty of Wanda Sykes' comedy. And I'm so glad you got her because she's a genius. And I've been a fan ever since I first saw her on Chris Rock's talk show, sketch show back on HBO back in the late 90s. Massive fan at first.
That was Dean Lorey knows Wanda from having worked with her. And so that was another one of those phone call from friend to friend, and she was like, "Yeah, sure." Well, and we obviously wrote it,
excellent.
For her.
And of course, too, the introduction of Alan here as Clayface becomes a huge, and then this is another member of the crew that's so important in everything.
Yeah, exactly. With Noonans as kind of the hub of villainy or of sort of second tier villainy in Gotham. When we meet Clayface, we don't know it's Clayface. He's this
big bartender. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just he's like bartender, country bumpkin who just moved to the big city, straight out of Central Casting. That's all of Clayface's characters are just complete tropes or terrible versions of tropes. And we really we get to see Clayface in action multiple times, showing off his shape-shifting superpowers, first as this bartender, this hunky sort of southern bartender, and then or Texan bartender, I suppose it's kind of the accent. Alan's from Texas, so
okay. And then of course he morphs into the mailman who claims to be Maxie Zeus's son, and continues to morph to Max's, whether he's truly has a son or not. Oh, I thought you had blue eyes. Oh, it must have been the light. Oh, I thought don't you have a hunchback? And all of a sudden he has a hunchback. It's fantastic, man. It's hilarious. Yeah. And I don't mean to rush through it, but I know we're going to talk about another. We're taping these. I'll confess in a roll, and poor Patrick's I know got a schedule to keep. So I don't mean to rush us along, but yeah, I mean honestly, again, just as important as the Joker, Alan is incredible as Clayface.
He's so good. He's so good. Like I said, we're, embarrassment of riches, and Clayface will, we're talking about episode 3 here, but he will get a ton to do as the series moves forward.
Great stuff, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly. And then again, Harley is able to go with the crew and take Maxie down. and gets Maxie to admit, hey, Harley's got a crew, don't fuck with him and stuff, to impress even the Queen of Fables at the end of the show.
Yes, who is still trapped in the book, but maybe won't be as time progresses. Actually, I have a quick story,
please,
because this is one of those ones where I know we talked about in episode 2, the finger banging was like part of the equation, but we ended up kind of getting that one in there at the end of the day. But this episode features a moment that was, or a way of, it features a moment that did not make it because it was deemed too ribald, too blue for even this show. And there's a version of it, but it's a cleaner version of it that exists in the show, and it has to do with Queen of Fables. She's telling her story about how she got trapped in the book and the glass ceiling and all of that while she's in this sort of H&R Block tax office. And she's trapped in the 1986 U.S. tax code. And she tells Harley, that's why I'm in this book now. The Justice League put me in here, and here I am, working here with assistants like Mark, the gingerbread man. And we show this gingerbread man who is talking gingerbread man who came from one of Queen of Fables' books, and he's kind of her assistant. And Mark is his name, and he's her assistant at the tax office. And at that point, Mark just kind of like looks back on his life and says, "Yeah, but in this high pitched voice, like it's better than turning tricks under a bridge for money." And the original line was, "It's better than sucking dicks for money."
Well, the euphemism worked because I think we all know what he meant when he was saying, yeah, exactly, turning tricks under the bridge. It's like, yeah, I think we know what you're doing, Mark.
It was so, like, it's one of those things where, like, you probably don't miss it if you didn't know that it was originally in there, but, like, it killed so many of the writers on staff that we had to clean it up a little bit, because then Ivy calls it back, and she originally calls him the dick-sucking cookie. And, like, now it's, like, trick-turning cookie, But it was, like, one of those things where it was, like, late in the game. Then somebody saw it, like who hadn't been, one of the higher ups, who knows, saw it and was like, "We can't do this." And I'm literally like sitting in like the mix for the episode, get a call, and we're like, "You guys have to change that." So we had to like reopen the mix and re-record the cookie saying the just saying, because it fit the trick turning, and we got lucky. Yeah. It fit. It no pun intended. It fit in his mouth.
Literally, exactly.
And we changed it. So that was the one. That's like literally like the one thing I can think of in this entire series that they were like, "Please, don't put that in there, please, for the love of God. We're putting our foot down." And also because I know we're talking about these episodes airing on Sci-Fi.
Yeah.
When we got news that Sci-Fi was going to be re-airing the shows, I immediately was just like, "Oh my God, how much are we going to have to like take out of these episodes?"
Yeah.
And they literally had one note, and the note was, "Can you please bleep out when Doctor Psycho says the C word?" And we're like, "Well, yeah, yes." Like that, we did that to begin with. That's the joke that we want to keep in there. We would actually probably push back if you asked us not to bleep it out. So that literally was like the only thing. And, we had to recut them to find commercial breaks. But
sure. Yes.
Like you're talking about like shaving like a second off, like here or there. There's every joke, every, bloody moment of the show is going to play out as intended in these Sci-Fi cuts.
That's amazing.
It's pretty awesome.
Seriously, man, nobody bats 1,000. And truly, I do think that the powers that be were being incredibly generous and not canceling a bunch of your jokes that do get pretty raw and get pretty R-rated. So that's fantastic. And again, I think you guys handled the cookie solution quite well. So that's great too, man. Excellent episode. I want to save time for us to talk about Chapter 4, which people will see in the next episode. But as we're taping, I will thank you for these comments on Episode 3. And look forward to our conversation about Episode 4 that has a lot more stuff. I'm telling you, man, great show. Every episode, it's like, that was awesome. That was amazing. And I'm glad that Sci-Fi's doing them in these big blocks. But I look forward to people even seeing it episodically, whether they purchase them on iTunes or watch them on Sci-Fi or if they've got the stream. So thank you, as always, for your time, buddy.
Thanks, John.
Thanks again for watching another Word Balloon video. We've got plenty more at our channel, Word Balloon. If you enjoyed it, please like it and consider subscribing to the channel. And of course, support me on Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon. Thanks a lot for watching.